Let me see how many hands there are from the audience. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So right here, yeah.
I also am heavily involved with Refuse Fascism. I'm on the steering committee, and I know that our steering committee has spent extensive amounts of time trying to figure out what November 4th is going to look like, the launch, and then the days to follow. And one of my questions was for you, like, I'm just curious to know what you envision November 4th to look like in this country, and then what do you envision the days following November 4th to look like? And then my other question was, there is this idea of reaching out broadly, and that includes people that don't necessarily agree with the need of a revolution. But what if that actually isn't happening in reality? How could we overcome that obstacle? So those are my two questions.
Yeah, well, yes, I think those two questions are closely connected. Because first of all, in the few weeks remaining before November 4th, the word really has to get out about this on a whole other level from what it is now. I mean, not only should it be all over social media, but I don't know what the appropriate, means are, or the appropriate embodiment is, but in the old days, we would have said signs and stickers should have been everywhere so that, the word really needs to get out broadly about. I think there are a lot of people out there, I'll get to your second question in a minute, but I think there are a lot of people out there who would gravitate to this if they knew about it. And one of the big contradictions is not nearly enough people. This is my sense. I hope I'm wrong, but somebody can tell me if I'm wrong. But if I'm right, it's a problem that needs to be worked on. That the word needs to get out much more broadly, and we need to really be creative in finding the ways. It goes back a little bit to the question that was raised about Amy Goodman and the media and so on. We got to find a lot of different ways to get the word out. It should be that everybody, in a city like, I know New York, look, it's a big city, for example, New York, but it's also, one of the things that strikes me every time I come here is that, Manhattan is a small place with a lot of people, so it should be possible to get, people are packed, and it should be possible to reach a lot of people in Manhattan. And I don't want to sound like Frank Sinatra or something, but if you make a big deal in New York, it'll be a big deal, okay? So we got to that's got to be figured out. People should put their heads together and figure out how to get the word out on whole different levels in a way that's building. One thing building on another. People learn about it, get involved, reach more people. But also, what are some creative means to break into the media that doesn't want to do this? Doesn't want to get out the word about this. What are all the different kind of ways that the word can get out and people can begin to get organized? I mean, it goes. I know that, for example, the Women's March. Look, I don't want to be cynical, but one of the reasons I think it was as big as it was because it was called for the day after the inauguration. So it was look, it was a very positive thing. Let me be clear. I don't want to imply that it was not very positive. But one of the things about it was a little bit easier for people to be part of that, because if it had been on Inauguration Day, it would have been a whole different thing. Or if it had been the day before, it would have been even another whole different thing. So I feel that we have to really capture people's imagination with the living reality of A, what is really going on and why this is necessary, and B, the living reality that people are really determined to make this happen and are going to overcome every obstacle that they can overcome to make it happen. So that kind of message needs to get out on a whole other level, not just in New York, but all over the place. That's one thing that I would emphasize. And people need to put their heads together and figure that out. The second thing I would say is that whilst the things you talked about are things that should be done, there also needs to be built into it a way that things can build, so that what you're doing is actually being amplified, and new waves of people are being drawn in day after day. Otherwise, I'm afraid what will happen is the numbers will diminish day by day by day. If there isn't a conception and an orientation and actual thinking and plans about how can these demonstrations be, like a lightning bolt that lights up the sky and thousands of people are involved, but tens of thousands and millions actually are learning about it. And then it's drawing people to it. That I think that's very important. What I wanted to say about the Women's March was it's not just a negative thing, it was a little easier to do it. And not just that it was positive overall, but I do think it reflected a sentiment that's still there, that people really hate this. Tens and tens of millions of people hate this, and somehow, and not just somehow magically, but by going to work on it, that somehow, this has to be translated into their becoming involved. All tens of millions are not going to get involved right away, but thousands, the reason the formulation is used, thousands growing to millions, is not just the same people are determined and keep doing things, but that everything they do becomes both a lightning rod to draw the attention of broader people, and the means are incorporated into it that make possible drawing new numbers of people. And so you get a dynamic, if you want to use that word, going where it does become like the Women's March. A few people had the idea, and then it caught on. And then there waves of people got more and more involved. That's what needs to happen here in the very, very telescope period of a few weeks between now and November 4th, and then going forth on November 4th. So we have to be, down on the ground, dealing with the real world, but we also have to really think big, and then connect the two. How do you take a big vision and actually do things to work toward making it a reality? So that's what I would say about that, and this needs to happen, not just in Manhattan, but other parts of New York, and people being drawn to Manhattan who don't usually come to Manhattan. I mean, there are people out there in the other boroughs, or even other parts of Manhattan, who don't come to the part of Manhattan you're talking about. That has to get overcome too. Thinking has to go in about that. How do you make it so that it's a magnet that people come there from all over Manhattan, but also all over the city, while they're doing other things in other parts of the city as well. And the same thing in other cities and towns. But I would say the key thing now, along with developing the actual thinking and plans for that, is really coming up with really creative, determined ways to get the word out on a whole other level. Did I speak to the second part of your question, or was there was something else?
Yeah, it was just like if like the idea that like we're supposed to be reaching out broadly, but it's not.
Oh, yeah, it's not happening.
It doesn't feel like it's happening in reality. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I'm familiar with the phenomenon, not only in this particular situation. I mean, sometimes things really take off, and sometimes what you're talking about happens, and it's very frustrating. And I think first of all, there is a question of a lot of more people have to know about it. Second of all, people, including the communists who are working in refuse fascism, we have to get better at what we're doing so that people don't feel they have to agree with us on everything that we're about, in order to be part of this. That's one thing. On the other hand, we have to struggle with people. There are some of these prejudices. Some of them are not without any justification, and most of them are that, this is some sort of scheme to manipulate people into something, and that's why even though we say we want it to be very broad, we don't really mean that, we just want it to be tightly controlled. Look, this needs to be a movement that's way out of the control of any particular group of people, including, our party and the people who are close around it. I don't mean out of control in a bad sense. I mean in a good sense, that there are just so many people involved that, that all kinds of things are happening with all kinds of initiative that, that's the image and the vision that we need to be having in mind and aiming for. And I think, we need to talk honestly with people about, if people are, I remember hearing about, one area where somebody said, well, we're just not attracting people, and I'm not going to come back until we talk about why we're not attracting people. Well, that's a legitimate thing. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about people. Let's talk with people who were involved and then dropped away. Let's talk with new people about getting involved. But let's really have the orientation, that we mean what we say. This has to be very, very broad. I mean, look, it should involve people who say, look, I don't know about this fascism thing. It's not like Refuse Fascism should drop its analysis. That's a very important analysis that should be at the core of this. But you need to have people involved say, I don't know if even what fascism is, and I don't know if I agree with you about all that, but I hate this and I think it's terrible and I think I agree with you, we need to mobilize people to get it out of there. Well, those people should be not only, hold your nose, okay, come in, but should be, and not only just welcome, but should be actively involved and encouraged to take initiative to draw in more people like themselves. And then we can keep on discussing, well, what is this fascism? Why do we insist on calling it fascism? Why don't we just say it's bad? Is there a particular meaning to fascism? And what is it? Is there a history there we can learn from? Yeah, we should discuss those things, but let's, if we really agree this is terrible and it really is going to be disastrous if this keeps going this way, then if you agree with that, you should be involved. And yes, you're gonna come in contact with some people from the RCP, and they're gonna make some mistakes, just like you're gonna make some mistakes, but you're probably gonna survive it. You know what I mean? And so come on in. Let's all get together. This is what we agree on. If you agree on this, then you need to be involved, and don't make excuses not to be involved because some people are involved that you don't agree with. I mean, if we have a great cause, and this is a great cause, you're going to have to be involved with a lot of people that you disagree with about things. I mean, like I said, I engaged in this dialogue with Cornel West, whom I have a great deal of respect for, but I have some big disagreements with him, and so does he with me, obviously. Well, that's it. We want that kind of spirit and atmosphere, and come on in. The water's fine. There are a lot of really good people, who have, really good hearts and really good ideas about what needs to happen and what can't be tolerated. And come in and be part of that. And we have to just keep working on it. I don't think there's a magic solution. But if people, I don't care who they are, if it's our people, other people are acting in ways that set up barriers to people, then we should talk about not doing that. We shouldn't put up barriers to people that are wrong. If people want to come in and say, I'd like to join your group, but I think it should be a group to support Trump. Well, okay, then those people don't belong. But there shouldn't be artificial barriers to people getting involved. You should have a welcoming atmosphere to people. This is a really great cause. It is. For humanity. It really is. And that should come across in the way we approach people. And it's what we should encourage people to be themselves coming in on. So I don't know any magic solution to that, except that we have to have the right orientation and we have to keep working on it. And when we make mistakes or we think other people are making mistakes, we should raise them and discuss them honestly. It's very important. What Refuse Fascism is I can't overstate it. It's extremely important. And so we shouldn't be bashful about telling people we think they're making mistakes, And if you tell me I'm making a mistake and I don't agree, then we can discuss it. If you point out something to me and I can see it right away, so much the better. But that's the kind of atmosphere we need to have here with all kinds of diverse people. We really do not just say that, but we have to, I know you mean it or you wouldn't be raising the question of, why is this happening? So we all mean it, but we have to actually get better at doing it. And we have to help each other, including by telling each other when we think we're making mistakes. We don't have to, immediately agree. Maybe somebody thinks they're doing the right thing and you're wrong. But still we should discuss it without it become, look, this is not about us in our egos or narrow things like that. It's about what is happening in the world and what this means for humanity. And if we keep that in mind, then we can deal with these things in a good way.